Celtic head into the latest international break, top of the league table, in the League Cup final, unbeaten domestically and in the driving seat to qualify for the knockout stages of this season's UEFA Champions League. Based on all of that, I think we can forgive a slightly below par performance on the nonsense that is Kilmarnock's plastic pitch. A performance that saw yet another win and yet another clean sheet for Brendan Rodgers' side. We'll cover it all and much more in this latest instalment of the Celtic Exchange Weekly. Well, tonight I'm joined by James and Asim as we once again cover all things Celtic. Asim, welcome back to the show. What's your take on where Celtic find themselves ahead of the latest round of internationals?
Good evening, Tino, James. Well, I think your intro kind of said it all. What a start to the season it's been. These last couple of weeks particularly, we're just saying off air there that it's just a great time to be a Celtic fan. The performances, the results. It's as excited as I've been for quite a few years about Celtic's prospects and what we can potentially achieve this season. And you're right, you can forgive yesterday's performance. It wasn't the best, but I think after the week we've had to come away to a difficult fixture and still come away with 3 points and a clean sheet, you couldn't really ask for more.
James, Asa makes a good point. It's a challenging week and it's three very different challenges. So you've got Aberdeen at Hampden, and I'm going back just over the week, but Aberdeen at Hampden in a League Cup semi-final. Then the huge challenge that is Leipzig, second in the Bundesliga and the Champions League at Celtic Park. And then you go to that nonsense of a park, and we covered it about UI and Brido on the post-match show, so we'll skip that for now. But pretty sketchy surface, not a surface built for football. But at the end of the day, Celtic do what all good sides do and find another way to win.
Yeah, and not just that, they showed another side of themselves that they can scrap it out. You know, I wouldn't say it's our forte at all to be digging out scrappy, fighting wins against physical teams, but you know, they showed they could handle it. I think there's some players maybe need to kind of learn that side of their game. Engels, I would say in particular. But you know, we got there, we got over the line, and it's 3 big points, 2 goals, another clean sheet. So all the talk about, I mean, I went to switch on sports and it was just a Kilmarnock fest. It's like they could beat 2-0, got 0 points. So you'd get no credit.
I'll come back to you shortly in terms of some stats around clean sheets and a few other really positive things from Celtic's opening to the campaign, Asim. But you may remember Brendan Rodgers talking just on the back of the US tour in pre-season about it being, I think, words to the effect of one of the best pre-seasons he's ever been involved in as a manager or as a coach. We've seen big wins over Chelsea and Man City, and you don't want to get carried away with them too much, but has the work over there and the performances over there set the tone for all that we're seeing just now?
We all remember the Wembley Cup under Mowbray. I think that's all learnt a lesson from not reading too much into pre-season. But things felt different this time because we were playing, weakened Man City and Chelsea teams, but it was the way we were playing. If you just focus on what Celtic were doing, it looked like we meant business. It looked like there was a plan in place. We had players like Kuhn even back then showing really good performances, and you wondered, is this just a purple patch? But it just felt like it was all aligning to what we've then gone on to see in this first few months of the season. James, you made a good point there that like yesterday, I think that's a game last season that we dropped points in. And I think the manager alluded to that as well, because very similar to the 2-1 defeat at Rugby Park last season where we didn't really play well and it felt like their goal was coming and then they went and they turned around. We were 1-up and they ended up winning 2-1, but it showed a more steely side, and I think you've got the quality of Kuhn up front, Kasper, Schmeichel and goals, coming up with big saves at crucial points. But you're right, this all started from pre-season and then the recruitment, which we all wanted to see some action. And even if you're talking about like Engels and Ida, they might not be the best performing players right now, but just see bringing in that competition, bringing in that quality seems to have raised the game of a lot of the collective group. And I think we're just seeing a squad and a manager and a fan base all in alignment right now, heading in the one direction.
James, that's the point when you've got your backup players, you know, your subs of a higher quality than what used to be the case. You know, the guys that were in the 11 before, by and large, they knew they were staying in the 11 regardless of what went on, because the quality on the bench wasn't quite what it should be. Now when you've got Adam Idas and Luke McCowens and Paulo Bernardo's and, you know, various other guys of high quality in the bench, that just pushes everyone on to be better. We talk a lot, and we'll continue to talk about guys like Nicolas Kuhn, Rio Hatate, Callum McGregor, you know, Dyson Maeda, Kyogo, all the attacking forces that Celtic have got. But you cannot discount the importance of Kasper Schmeichel to this team, both in terms of a personality and also what he's bringing on the pitch.
Yeah, I mean, he showed all his personality at the end with Donnelly, didn't he? You know, he wasn't putting up with any of that nonsense. So
he was furious.
He really was, and I wouldn't like to get into a furious situation. I mean, a big lad. But he just that is part of him showing that he can stand up for not just himself but for his team and his defence. So it was good to see. And when you lose a character like Joe Hart and the captain figure that is Joe Hart, there's a bit of danger that you don't bring in as strong a personality. You can bring in an excellent goalie that isn't a presence. Say we just signed Sinisalo, who turned out to be a fantastic goalie, but a bit younger. But you've got both Sinisalo and you've got obviously Schmeichel in there as that full replacement of personality. It's great to see him. Big fan.
And I think there's chat that when he came into the dressing room at first, what has he got? 110 caps now for his national side. You know, being at World Cups, being at Euros. You know, played at Man City, huge clubs. But I think there was an article about how he came into the dressing room, but was very keen to give Callum McGregor his place, you know, not to overstep the mark. But there's no doubt that he's very much part of this leadership now, leadership group. You know, there's guys like him, Alistair Johnson, Cameron Carter-Vickers, the guys that tend to get the armband actually when Callum McGregor's not there. And I think it's a huge support to Callum McGregor to have these guys next to him carrying the team. Yeah,
you're right, because I think that was the biggest concern when Joe Hart left. Not even so much the goalkeeping, which I think towards the second half of last season Joe Hart was really good, but it was more the personality, the leadership, the charisma that he has around the dressing room. And you did worry because, again, it's quite a young squad that we've got. And I think Callum McGregor especially would just absolutely love having the presence of someone like Kasper Schmeichel. Just oozes that kind of leadership, not to mention his distribution, by the way. Like how much of a difference I think that's making to our play this season.
Although James doesn't like the wee chippy pass he plays out to fullbacks.
I've hated it since Craig Gordon days. It's a terrible ball for a fullback to get. It's like flighty, and by the time he gets on,
he's having to go backwards.
Two guys coming on him. It's just to stop.
There's I feel like over the last few weeks I've mentioned a fella Stuart Ross 89 on Twitter. Stuart does analysis and stuff. I don't know if it's the Celtic way or something, but he does stuff. He does some great stuff, pulls together some great clips. And one of the ones he does almost every week now is Kasper Schmeichel's distribution. So that pass aside,
everything else is
some of his distribution, either ball in hand or at the deck, is exceptional.
We'll probably talk about the Leipzig game a wee bit later in the kind of the bigger picture of that. But I thought especially in that game, you've seen the benefit of that because we're getting closed down by a really high pressing team, and him just being able to evade that press with his distribution skills. But yesterday, for the first time, maybe Atalanta as well, but even more so probably yesterday, we've seen his importance in shot stopping because the one that Kennedy had when he was through, that's a goal 9 times out of 10. Brilliant save there. So I think he's been massive, and you know it was interesting listening to Joe Hart in the commentary for I watched the game back, and
he's so biased, isn't he? He's ridiculous, man.
But he's very good as well, just in terms of insight. You know, talking about
biased but knowledgeable.
But very knowledgeable, because there was phases in that game where we're at the ground, so you're feeling that kind of panic and anxiety when they're on top. But he's staying very calm as a biased co-commentator, but saying this is all part of the Champions League. This happens. It's all about keeping your cool. Celtic will get back in it. And that's how it played out.
There was one, just sorry to interrupt, there was one where they nearly scored when Trusty had a misplaced pass, and he went, you know, if he'd broke the lines there, that'd have been Celtic away in attack, so you've got to give him a break there. I was like, you don't get a break for that, Joe. Come on.
I mean, I think back to watching Joe Hart absolutely gift wrap a goal for
Leipzig.
Ironically Leipzig. And then afterwards he came in and said, the manager's told us to do that. Yeah. And Miff always maintains he didn't tell you to do exactly that, i.e. give it to the striker. But I see where he's coming from. Actually, I think it's been really good to hear him. He's obviously now an unofficial ambassador for Celtic every time he steps onto the mic, but he's also very good. I think he's doing pretty well for himself there. Just in terms of those last 3 results then, Aberdeen, Leipzig and then Kilmarnock, 3 wins for Celtic, 11 goals for, just the 1 against, which is pretty impressive in itself. But I'll look at the bigger picture to get your lads' thoughts on the campaign as a whole so far. So we've played 18 games, won 15, drew 2 and lost that outlier, that fluke by
we can call it that now, can't we?
You've got the stats around it to start calling it something like that, so we'll leave that where it is. So lost just the 1 game. Goals for 54, goals against 15, meaning that we're averaging exactly 3 goals a game and conceding an average of 0.83 per game. Kasper Schmeichel, the aforementioned, he's kept 11 clean sheets in those 18 games, and he and Hatate are the only players to have played in all 18 games so far. Nicolas Kuhn undoubtedly is a star man. He's got 10 goals and 11 assists after his goal, and he's getting the assist for Callum McGregor's at Kilmarnock, which seems a bit loose. And that makes 21 goal contributions from his 17 appearances so far. Other notable scorers include Maeda on 9, Kyogo on 6, Callum McGregor and Adam Ida on 5. The big question for you both, but I'll come to you first, Asim. Has this Celtic side under Brendan Rodgers version 2.0 got the potential to be better and to go further than any Celtic side in recent memory? And I include Ange, Brendan first time. I even want to go back to a Martin O'Neill, a Gordon Strachan. You can maybe throw Lenny and some results into the mix. So let's go back to the turn of the century.
Wow. Well, if I look at the Leipzig game, because I think Champions League and European football has to be the benchmark and the barometer for us to put it in comparisons with the Martin O'Neill team. I think if we compare it, obviously we're still very early in the season, but domestically we look as good as Brendan. Brendan's first season was brilliant. Ange's second season was brilliant, but I think we're up there right now in terms of performance and consistency. The difference being we're backing it up in Europe as well now, because that's 3 out of 4, so it's not like one-off games. That's 3 out of the 4 Champions League games. We've been brilliant in different ways. And that, for me, is something that I can only remember as far back as Martin O'Neill's time. And people might say that's unfair, you're kind of missing out Strachan and Lennon's, but it's the manner of that Leipzig performance, which I think people spoke about it, but for me it goes back to Lyon. That's the last time I've seen Celtic dominate a top-class European team in that kind of fashion. And that's what gives me the excitement. This team does have the potential. But the challenge is you've now got games against Club Brugge. We've obviously got a cup final coming up, Tynecastle, Pittodrie, Dinamo Zagreb. These are now games we're expected to win. The pressures are different from the Leipzig and Atalanta game where there's now an expectancy. Celtic Park's going to be expecting us to beat Bruges that night. That'll be the challenge. But I think there's definitely a potential for us to get out of this knockout phase. Look, people will be like, don't get ahead of yourselves, but what's beyond that we can dream of as fans? I don't think the manager and players will be thinking like that. But I'm looking at that table and I'm like, we can do something this season. It's definitely got the potential. And I look around the team, I can't see a weakness right now. From goalkeeper, where we've had good teams in the past, but maybe not the goalkeeper. Defence looks solid. I just feel like we maybe need a bit more depth in the forward areas, but I'm very excited, I'll be honest.
Yeah, and we'll put a wee bit of focus onto the second half of our Champions League campaign at the end of the show. Really keen to get your thoughts and your forecasts on what those next 4 games will look like. James, you know that I put the tweet out, I think it was on Thursday night, basically saying now the dust is settled, does the Leipzig performance, and important to stress performance versus result, is that as good a performance as you've seen from Celtic in the last 20 odd years? The poll came back, there was 500 odd folk voted, and it came back, I think 91% said it was. There was a few decent responses. The Lyon game you mentioned, I think a Benfica win, the Barcelona win, but you can't equate the Barcelona performance to that performance. No. Great results as both of them were. The way that Celtic got that win against Leipzig is what makes it a bit of a standout. James, I'm a huge Martin O'Neill fan. Everybody is, aren't they?
Yeah,
there's no debating what he done. And he put Celtic back on the European map. We'd been in the doldrums for some time. Martin O'Neill comes in summer 2000 and very quickly restores our credibility, and then some. All of a sudden you're beating Juventus and others in the Champions League. But people have debated even those performances. He made his teams physical and hard to beat. He always had big guys in his team, from his strikers, whether that's Hartson and Sutton, to your Bobo Baldys and your Johan Mjalbys at the back, and Lenny being the enforcer midfield, all these kind of physical attributes. And they played some very good football, but at times you did rely a wee bit on a bit of Larson brilliance or individual brilliance. So without taking anything away from the exceptional Martin O'Neill years, do you think this team play better and perform better, or are things just a wee bit different?
I think it's starting to challenge them, but it's not got enough consistency or time to say that it could surpass them. I mean, I appreciate that O'Neill did resort to physicality when it was necessary.
Not personally.
Nah, you don't know that. But I was at Ajax away, and we just were absolutely flying. So the football there was tremendous. And yeah, we had Larson, but we had plenty of others. You had guys like Bobby Pettit playing out his skin. You had Hartson, Sutton. There was real football in that team. Petrov, Thompson. So no, it wasn't a team of bruisers by any stretch. There was big lads at the back and stuff like that. So I think it's a great debate question for maybe not even the end of this season, the end of next season, before Brendan says goodbye.
We'll get to that. I've got a similar hypothetical question coming up, so don't worry about that.
Just to touch on that though, like we were all of an age, we were fortunate enough to really witness that Martin O'Neill team and see it in all its glory. For a lot of younger guys like my nephew, it's the first time they've seen Celtic beat a big team.
Flying.
Yeah. And Brendan said at his press conference, he's heard it being talked about a generational game. It potentially is, for younger guys who've just seen Celtic fail in Europe year after year for the last God knows how long. That was huge. They can go to their pals and schools and talk about a big Celtic victory the way we did when we beat Juventus that first time, or Ajax. You just need to back it up now. And you're right, I think it's too soon for us to compare, because they got to a UEFA Cup final, that team, and they regularly beat big teams. this is the start of it, but now's the challenge
But I think that is better than all the others you mentioned.
in terms of performance.
In terms of team
Benfica's and Leon's
performance,
stuff.
what they've built on, what they have built.
What is it's definitely a reference point. It's one we'll look back on, hopefully very fondly in years to come if we qualify. It's also a reference point to say, this is where you can get to as a side. I think it was so important for the dressing room because the manager can tell you one thing and convince you of things and build you up and train you in a certain way. The results are the be all and end all in football. So the fact that, I'm saying that the result and the performance, so he's convinced them they're capable of that, but they had to go and prove that as a group, and they've done so. And I think, and I made the point on the back of Tuesday night, we're only going to continue to improve. As guys spend more time with the manager, get more up to speed, work even better as a unit. And dare I say the sky's the limit?
Yeah, well, the manager would have been convincing them they're good enough going into the Dortmund game. Right? And that's
He convinced me.
Oh, I had
convinced
me
us all.
hook, line and sinker.
I'd booked my flights and my tickets to go to Dortmund. But the thing was, they would have taken a right hit after that because they themselves
100%.
may have thought, are we good
You
enough?
saw it in the Aberdeen Ross County games.
Yeah, the follow-up to that, you've seen that they seemed a bit flattened by what happened. He had to lift them again to the Atalanta game where we had to put on a different kind of fight and a different performance just to feel like, okay, we can compete again. But the other night, we made a team that's second in Bundesliga. I've never seen, for the last 10, 15 minutes, they chucked it.
Gave up.
Yeah.
They chucked it.
Game
I've
over.
not seen that. And I think that's where now that core group of players and that squad, even, because you've got likes of Yang, who I know you're keen on, he was coming on and looking like a world beater. They now probably believe, well, we're just as good as these guys. We were keeping the ball off them for fun, and I think that's where the belief is huge. And you're right, the sky is the limit. Where I now go into any one-off game in the Champions League thinking, we can do it.
Yeah, the belief is there. Zinedine's a Yang, as he will forever now be known, but there's so much going on. I don't even have time to cover Yang in this week's show. I do want to ask about a few guys individually, though. Schmeichel, that we've covered, Austin Trusty, Arne Engels and Nicolas Kuhn, they're the four key additions to the starting 11 from last season. There's different guys around the squad, but they're the four that seem to be starting in the big games for Celtic. So, James, is it too simple to say that they individually are the main reason, or is it a bit of everything between those guys coming in and the manager continuing to do his thing?
Yeah, I just don't think this is a team of individuals. I think a big thing is getting a left centre half and a right centre half in the same team. And we saw yesterday what happens when we don't have that. So, square pegs for square holes is common sense. And then you can really start to see Trusty thrive. So, probably about 3 weeks ago, we all sat here and went, don't know if it's going to happen for the big man. And then, by the weekend, we're like, oh, there's something there. By Atalanta, by Leipzig, you're raving about him.
The man himself created the hashtag Trusty the Process. So if it's good enough for him.
It's not as bad as Christopher Julian. What was his? Remember he had one a few years ago?
Superman and
I
all
think
that
he was
stuff.
something like dream, believe, achieve.
Live, laugh, love.
Live, laugh, love. Aye. You've got this, that's the modern player. Question for you as we round off this section. We're now in a very good position, playing with real confidence. As you say, there's no obvious weak links in the side, which is rare for us to say. That said, you should always be looking to improve and see what's next. So we're only around about 50 days until the January window opens. And on that, if you can make one and just one key addition to the side in terms of an area of the park, where would it be? One.
1.5 now.
I'm the same.
It depends.
Just give us your one.
By what's the situation? We need to know. That needs fixed.
Well, Brendan Rodgers was asked and he said it's news to him. So there was lots of speculation.
But then you don't keep him on the bench and put Greg. He's a better player than Greg Taylor. All ends up.
For me as well, but
Aye.
I think there's no doubt that the manager does trust Greg Taylor at different times. He's
I think
shown he's
that's a
got
blind
faith in
spot.
him.
That's a blind spot, and that will cost you.
Right, but get back to my question. Where are you going?
So I want a left back this
is your one?
Does an improvement on Taylor. I think that's where we're weakest at the moment still, unless we cement by. If he's not going to be around for the rest of the season come January, then we need to do something about that. We will not progress if we get to knock out Champions League with Taylor left back. And I love the guy. I think he's a great character. You mentioned captains earlier on. He's one of them. But we know his limit in terms of European calibre. It's the turning back. Bailly looks for opportunities and Greg Taylor sees risks. And that's the easiest way to kind of assess those two players. And Rodgers wants players that take risks and go forward, take the ball forward. Taylor's bringing it back, and it slowed us down against Leipzig a couple of times. It held us back yesterday. That's the biggest problem I think we've got. So that's the area that needs addressed. If Bailly's staying, or even better, we sign Bailly, then I would like an extra option, please.
No can do.
Okay.
So left back for you. Asim, what's the key area for you?
Surprised at that one, because as much as I do agree, I thought Taylor was struggling again last week in the first half against Leipzig. Thought he came onto a game second half. I think the two of them are providing good competition now. I do agree, Bhoys probably my preferred option, but let's assume he is staying for the rest of the season. I've said it from the start when the window closed. I still feel we're short in the winger areas. I think Kuhn and Maeda, but then the drop-off's too big. The drop-off for me is too big, and as much as Jan can come in and produce that, he can also produce a nothing performance too often. Palma for me is just not good enough to be a contributor, and Forrest can come in games like yesterday and do well, but again, if I'm looking at the barometer being Europe, then I think that's the area I would ideally want a forward as well, because I think Ida and
James, that sounds like two answers.
Okay, wide option.
Two wingers and a striker.
I want a winger.
But don't worry, I'll bail you out, because I think a forward is an area where we need some sort of improvement. And this isn't... I've got no concerns over Adam Ida, because we know he's a talented footballer and he's done it for Celtic, so there's no concerns there. He's just out of sorts. I think he's not travelling. He's been
Apparently he's
pulled from
out.
the international stuff, whether he's carrying something or just not quite fully fit. But he'll come good. But I just think in the programme that we've got ahead in terms of the games coming thick and fast as well, I think it takes a bit of weight. Kyogo's carried, the forward position for the most part, but I think you need maybe three for that one position, and I don't think it's good enough to have Dies Maeda, or he can play there.
Because then you weaken that.
Absolutely, and you say the shelf is huge.
You weaken the wide area and probably the centre forward area.
But can we get to see a bit of Cummings? He's banging them in for the youth. He's got a contract situation on the table. We need to resolve that. Can we get him on for the last 50 minutes in a game we're 2-3 up in?
It's a great question, and it's done the rounds because Brendan Rodgers mentioned that he'd offered Rocco Vata that third striker position as a youth player coming through. Daniel Cummins, if anyone's not aware, I think he's got something like 18 goals in 17 games. He scored a couple against Leipzig's youth side. I watched him score a couple against Slovan Bratislava at Lesser Hamden on that day. He must have something about him, and if a lad like that doesn't feature, then what's the point? So there's a question there.
It must be something though, because Rodgers was the same last season, and I trust him. I trust the manager to have kind of good judgment, and if he's feeling that they're not up to it, there must be whether it's physicality or something that's holding them back from giving these guys a chance, yet still giving chances to Palma occasionally. Obviously that's a wide role, or relying on Kyogo so heavily.
There's a debate doing the rounds just now about just this gap. I think I've seen Johnny Hayes online talking about it. There's this gap between kids, but not everyone's Yamin Lamal, Barcelona and Spain superstar who's turned it on at 16, 17. Most players tend to develop a wee bit later than that, whether it's 19, 20, 21. But you've got this situation where the gap between Celtic's youth players, I don't know what age Daniel Cummings is, he'll be about 17, 18, something like that. And the gap at that age and then being a regular within the first team, it's too big. And we don't have reserve football, we don't even have under 21 football. It's just, there's something not quite right there, and I think Celtic are suffering. We're going a wee bit off piste, but it'd be interesting to see Daniel Cummins because Francis Turley features, and I know the boy Kyle Ure, who I think at times captains the B team, he was training with the first team last week as well. So we'll see if there's a place for Daniel Cummins. What we'll do, we've covered all three of those recent results against Aberdeen, Leipzig and Kilmarnock in full in our final whistle post-match shows, as we do for every Celtic game, and you'll find them right now wherever you get your podcasts or at thecelticexchange.com. If you enjoy what we do here at the Celtic Exchange and want to support the show for less than 50p a week, then you can do so at thecelticexchange.supercast.com. The Celtic Exchange wouldn't be what it is without the backing of our listeners, so if you're not already supporting us, then please take just a couple of minutes to check that out, and we'll see you back again after this short break. Welcome back, folks. We'll be discussing and debating another listener's question just shortly, and as always, we encourage you to send in your questions for us to cover in any future episodes, and I'll let you know exactly how you can do so at the end of this section. In the meantime, this week's question comes from Jazz Smith. Jazz is a long-term listener to the show and he subscribes to our weekly newsletter, and he asks very simply, who done it best? Josip Juranovic, Matt O'Reilly and Jota, or Alistair Johnson, Arne Engels and Nicolas Kuhn? There's a lot of caveats, lots of ups and downs, if this and then that, blah, blah, blah. But James, your initial response to Jazz's question?
Johnson's better than Juranovic. Engels isn't anywhere near the consistency of Matt O'Reilly, and that's his issue at the moment. But
Matt O'Reilly became consistent, wasn't always consistent.
Different kind of players as well, though, aren't they?
They are, but in the same position, you know. I think, O'Reilly's come on and Saturday and reminded everyone
Brilliant.
the talent he is, and just so like the injury was so disgusting, the tackle on him, disgraceful stuff. To see him get through his rehab, come back and put Man City to the sword was just delightful. So it's O'Reilly over Engels for me at the moment. And the big one,
Kuhn v Jota.
Jota is all the style and some substance. Kuhn is nothing but German efficiency. All substance.
Do you know?
And style.
Yeah,
Not as nice as that, but
we had a bit of a Kuhn versus Jota debate, and you could also argue that Jota done it pretty consistently for the 2 seasons he was here. Kuhn's had a not even 6 months of it. What Kuhn's put in so far has been exceptional. 10 goals, 11 assists, as I mentioned. But also, maybe you're swayed, or I'm swayed by the fact that Jota is also a personality. The image on the screen just now shows us the kind of charisma that he had. But some folk could care less as long as you're winning games of football and doing it in a pretty stylish way. And I think Nicolas Kuhn is doing that at the moment.
Yeah, Jota had the full package in that sense, the charisma, the personality, likeability. He got you off your seats in the style of football that he played in. But in terms of, I don't know how the numbers will compute, but if Kuhn carries on the way he's going for a full season, it's probably as good as any of Jota's individual seasons. Obviously, Jota scored in European games. Kuhn's now done that. Derby games will be the next one where he's expected to score. I think he assisted, didn't he, in the 3-0 game?
Try to think.
The ball down the line. The first Maida's goal might have been him.
I cannot wait to see this Nicolas Kuhn unleashed on Rangers.
Exactly.
Twice in the space of a couple of weeks. Jeez.
He's
hefty.
Hefty, that's the one. I think he's, again, it's soon to compare, but I think he's got the potential to be just as good. I think just, again, the consistency, longevity of Jota wins that one. Juranovic, for me, was great, but Johnson's better overall.
Do you think Jota gets it for his farewell video alone, though? Remember that piece
Definitely
of
added him
art?
some brownie points, didn't it? He was just one of those characters. Everyone
didn't buy any of that nonsense.
Love it. I'm so
hook,
caught
line,
up.
sinker.
Oh,
Me and you are
just
similar in that.
tell us somebody offered me 25 million quid and I am out of here. Simple as that.
I'm disappointed he made the move that he made. I've got to be honest
To
with you.
Rennes or to Saudi?
To Saudi. I wanted to see him back in Europe in any way, shape or form. Well, just a bit of an update then. So he's at Rennes, as you mentioned there, but he's not got off to a flyer there. They're sitting 13th in the league. He had some sort of muscle injury, but he's only played 6 times, got 1 goal. In terms of Juranovic, bad luck for him as well. He's at Union Berlin, who almost got relegated on the last day, I think, last season. But he's not played at all this season, and the chat is he's out for the rest of 2024 with an ankle injury. Matt O'Reilly, as you mentioned, he's now, after an initial bump in the road, off to an absolute flyer. I was watching it live on Saturday night. I foolishly bet Brighton. That's not the foolish part, but I doubled it with Villa to beat Liverpool. What was I thinking? But I was like, regardless of any of that, I was just delighted for Matt O'Reilly because he's had to endure a tough couple of months. That's hard mentally. And his manager, is it Fabian? I forget his surname. The 31-year-old Brighton manager, Herzog or something like that, who's a really refreshing young manager. He has spoken really highly of Matt O'Reilly's mental fortitude to come back to do what he done, and what a reward to go and score the winner against Man City. I really like Arne Engels, and I think he's going to become something exceptional for Celtic, but he's got a long way to go before he overtakes Matt O'Reilly. Yeah,
I heard the comments from the Brighton manager, and it won't surprise any Celtic fans, because I think that's one of the things that really stood out about Matt O'Reilly, not just his performances on the pitch, how he conducted himself, his mentality. And I think the manager said he's never seen such a positive attitude on the back of getting such a horrendous start to your career, and it does not surprise you. So I was delighted to see him, typical Matt O'Reilly kind of go, and I think he'll go on to great things there. But in terms of the other two, I think AJ definitely for me is a better all-round player than
more physicality as well.
More physicality. I think
so I saw a bit of it yesterday.
Yeah, and he's added goals to his game. Yeah. He's good at getting forward, which initially I think something that maybe Juranovic was stronger at, but Juranovic struggled big time in the Champions League sometimes defensively. It makes you wonder sometimes. I know Celtic fans like to kind of talk about it a lot when players leave, and you wonder do they ever regret, or
I think he 100% does.
Yeah, because you're never going to get that same joy, that same mentality.
Juranovic spoke about it.
Yeah,
very few. Like obviously you get the odd exceptions, Virgil van Dijk and some others, but even Victor Wanyama was back last week at Celtic Park, and he must have been.
He came back looking like a bit of a fanboy, didn't he? He was hanging about the tunnel, getting selfies with Bruni.
He couldn't believe the welcome he got. It's like,
of course,
guy's a hero. Guy was great.
Yeah.
He must the best times of these guys' lives would have been probably, in a football sense, these Champions League nights at Celtic Park when things are going well, the adulation, the week in, week out mentality, the necessity to win. You don't get that when you're playing at Union Berlin. It's
not at all. And I actually think when they leave Celtic, the best bit about their career is every month just checking the old bank balance. Still looking great. But I think Juranovic, you can read the same into Georgios Giacomakis.
100%.
Age and stage in career where they felt they had to make that move. I think Juranovic came to the fore a wee bit later on, and he's kind of early to mid-20s. And they've got a call to make. They're obviously loving life at Celtic, loving life in Glasgow, and everything that Celtic can bring for a player.
And you remember the kind of reaction when these guys left. There was no hard feelings from a lot of Celtic fans.
It was all good.
I think we all probably expected Juranovic to go somewhere a bit better because it was on the back of the World Cup where he was brilliant.
Yeah.
So it was just maybe a surprise.
I think his agent dropped the ball there.
Aye.
He's maybe just gone for like £1 more and $1 more. Right, we're going to Union Berlin. That's it.
I think, and Celtic didn't get the numbers they thought they might have got for Juranovic. Was it maybe 7 million?
7,
something like that. Maybe age and different things come into the equation.
I think Ange wanted him out of the dressing room because he was starting to, he wanted the move.
Giacomakis or Juranovic?
Both actually.
Yeah.
I thought more with Giacomakis.
Giacomakis more so. I thought Juranovic was more of a causing a bit of problems kind of thing.
You start a rumour.
Yeah, starts
I
here.
like it. Get it out there. But I think you can see the way that how universally well received Matt O'Reilly's finish was on Saturday night. If you've any concerns about how players are judged after they leave Celtic, I think it was the right time for everyone, for Matt O'Reilly to move on. But I think everyone's delighted for what he's now doing, and hopefully he'll go on to do it at Brighton. So just to pin you down then on your 3, so you both agree that Alistair Johnston's the man, is that right?
Yep.
Matt O'Reilly?
For now.
On what we've seen, you can't argue. But
Aye.
one last point on that is we all really worried when Matt O'Reilly left. But as a collective, the Celtic midfield now look as good as it's been for a long time.
That yesterday, like Bernardo came on and just showed what a class player he is, right?
Player.
And
Luke
McCowen, huge fan. Yeah.
So agreed on AJ and Matt O'Reilly. Kuhn for you and Jota for you, is that the way we're
Jota
going?
for me still.
Yeah, it's a good debate and it's a good question from Jazz. There is a kind of second question which we'll get time to catch here, and it's relevant that we mentioned Luke McCowen. Several comments on our recent lives for the pre and post match for Kilmarnock felt that Luke McCowen should be getting much more game time, if not a start. I think you suggested that he should have got a start against Kilmarnock. Ronnie Forsyth and Gypsy King, two regular commenters, they're particularly keen to see him get many more minutes. So in terms of his stats so far, limited. So 9 appearances for Celtic, 2 goals within that time, but only 2 starts. I think he's unlucky that he's cup tied for the League Cup. That's obviously kind of put the brakes on things when he was finding a bit of momentum. I think he would possibly have started against both Falkirk and Aberdeen at the time, given how he'd been faring. But at the moment, James, he's very much on the periphery. What do you think the rest of the campaign holds for Luke McCowen?
It's tough because you do nothing wrong. It's part of, if we're building this squad with such depth, then it needs to be the 4. If Cal is going to be the 6 and he is and he's captain, that's just taken care of, then it's 2 from 4. So if he's not getting the nod yesterday, and then when he came on, he was lively, he was scrappy, put a bit of dig into things, he had a good ball through that could have been an assist if it was better finished. He nearly finished one himself. So I've no doubt Rodgers is sitting with him in the training weeks and saying, you're doing everything right here, just kind of keep doing what you're doing. And he spoke himself about this is him getting into his mindset of being a Celtic player, and he kind of just come in and start demanding things. But he'll get to a point where his sub-performances are so strong that he will be chaffing the door. If Engels keeps, being a wee bit inconsistent, and I don't want any slating Engels because I think he's a huge talent. Put it this way, if you've got Bernardo and McCowen on the bench and you're picking Engels, Rodgers thinks Engels is the better player, that's enough for me. But inconsistency happens to every player, and if he just needs a wee bit of a rest out, I want McCowen in there for sure.
I think McCowen, Asim, he's shown that it's not enough for him just to be a Celtic player. We've seen guys come to Celtic Park, maybe as Celtic fans. An example that pops to mind is Derek Riordan, who I think is certainly has leanings towards Celtic, but it just did not happen. It was almost like he got the move, thought, that'll do it, I'll get well paid here for a couple of years and that'll be that. Barely kicked a ball for Celtic. Whereas Luke McCowen, he feels like a player who's in the up and up. And if I'm being frank, he might not stop at Celtic. He might want to kick on to higher levels, and I think there's a long way to go before that. His next milestone is to get more regular starts. He might have an eye on a Scotland call-up, and why should he not? Because I think
definitely should.
I think when you've got what do you call your guy at Norwich that seems to always play
Kenny McLean.
Is that the future? 33-year-old Kenny McLean who huffs and puffs, or do you want a young dynamic Luke McCowen at 26 who can bring more to the party? And you'll have the ongoing frustrations for Steve Clarke, staying loyal to the guys that have got him so far. Steve Clarke is loyal to the guys that have got him here. Those guys aren't the guys that are going to get him there, and I think that's the issue. I've gone off topic again. But I think Luke McCowen is an ambitious young guy, and I think he's shown a certain hunger and enthusiasm in what he's brought so far.
You see that in his interviews as well. I think he speaks really well, and he doesn't speak like of a guy who's just got lucky. The Celtic fan living his dream. He spoke about how he feels like he wants to be part of it and actually earn his place. And you're right. I think he had the 2 starts, Motherwell away, scored, played against Dundee at home, and then kept the cup game. So he was totally out of the picture there, and then didn't get on against Leipzig. So I thought he might have started yesterday. I thought that would have been a good game for him to actually start. But the same can go for Bernardo. I think he's brilliant as well. So he's got stiff competition there, because Hatate's came off the back of his 2 best games for Celtic in a long time in Aberdeen and Leipzig. But I thought he played the full 90 and he looked knackered, so I thought it might have been a chance to give him a break.
I think that's part of what they're doing with Rio's rehabbing him to show that he can
do that.
Tom Rogic, he can do the 90. I was surprised. I was like, he's pretty much done here, and they kept him on.
That's a good point.
They want to
At
get
one
him
point, I think it was around about the 90th minute against Leipzig, he just lay flat out. He was absolutely spent. But it's good for him psychologically as much as anything else to know that he can complete the 90.
His body can do it. It's psychological.
But McCowen, I think you're right though. I think he's someone that's impressed me, and I think the amount of games we're going to have, he'll get game time. He'll get game time.
Do you think, just in a kind of summary then of McCowen's position, James, he's done very little wrong. He's impressed. He's done a lot of things right, but ultimately it's the competition. He's in this 5-man scrap for 3 positions. Again, Odin Thiago Holm doesn't feature in that just now, but it's Callum McGregor, the captain, so you're not getting his shirt anytime soon. It's Rio Hatate, who showed all his class against Leipzig, amongst other games. It's Arne Engels, your record signing, and it's Paulo Bernardo, who's also been a really smart addition to Celtic's midfield. It's not easy for any player to get beyond those 4.
No, but I don't think he's worlds away from them. I think he might have he's slightly behind them, but right behind them. And it won't be long before he's up beside them and overtaking them. I've got real high hopes for him. I think he can do it, yeah. I
think a lot of fans are excited, and I think the enthusiasm, the fact that he happens to support the club, it's a bonus. It's not the be-all and end-all, but I think it resonates, doesn't it? And fans can get on board with the Luke McCowen project, if you like, and here's hoping he kicks on. Thanks to Jazz Smith, Ronnie Forsyth and Gypsy King for this week's questions. If you want us to cover your questions on next week's show, then you can do so in one of 2 ways. Number 1, visit our website at thecelticexchange.com. Click the send voicemail button on the bottom right corner of the page, where you can simply leave your question as a voice clip. Alternatively, number 2, email me on Tino at thecelticexchange.com. Let's take another short break. When we come back, we'll play this week's Mystery Goal Scorer. Welcome back, folks. We'll begin this final section of the week's show, as always, by playing Name the Goal Scorer. Rules are very simple. We play a clip from a notable Celtic goal, but the goal scorer's name has been beeped out from the commentary, and all you have to do is name the goal scorer in question. Before we kick on, let's reveal last week's answer by playing the clip in full.
It's Leipzig and Salzburg who are in control in the group, but here goes Christie looking at. Well, the challenge was set down for these Celtic players, and they have just answered the call.
The goal in question, Odsonne Edouard, Celtic 2, Leipzig 1, Europa League 8th of November 2018. You obviously weren't here last week, Asim, but I know you got it right because we had a wee chat about it beforehand. So your memories from that night, a big night for Celtic at that time?
I was just the night before, a couple of nights before, I was just watching back the highlights of that game, just trying to get myself in the mood for the game. So I watched the 2 previous Leipzig highlights games of under Brendan Rodgers and under Ange. But what a night that was. It was Europa League, wasn't it? It was 2-1. We were 1 up, they scored, and then I just remember it was straight from kick-off. I think we played really well that night. Tierney, I think, got the first goal, and then Christie and Edouard worked really well to get the winner, and it was a big night. It was I think between us, Leipzig, Salzburg, I think that was the group, and that was crucial because somehow we managed to finish second in that group. It was a weird one because I think it was the last game of the group, and Rosenborg scored a late goal against Leipzig.
You're bang on. So we qualified from a group featuring Leipzig, Salzburg and Rosenborg, but we lost in the last 32 to Valencia. I think we lost the home game 2-0 and then 1-0 away. And I don't know why I've got zero recollection of that game.
I was there.
I just away.
I was away the game,
Right.
and then I remember it was a weird game. We got Toljan maybe got sent off, I think, early on, and it was just a
JT.
comfortable 2-0 victory. But I remember it because on the way back, I think that's when I found out Rodgers. We had Motherwell
It was
Motherwell
in
at
between
home,
times.
and then I think that was the day after he left. I'm pretty sure.
Is that the game where a guy went into the stadium the night before and hid?
No, that was during COVID times, was it
Is
not?
that Valencia?
No, I think that was a couple of years later. You're getting all your Celtic Euro nights mixed into one.
Yeah, they're all in one place.
James, I'll ask you about the individual in question, Odsonne Edouard. So he obviously got the winner that night. And a guy that got plenty of big goals for Celtic. So your thoughts on him overall? People say Kyogo's the best since Larsson, and other names that get thrown into the mix are Moussa Dembele and Odsonne Edouard. What's your take on French Eddie?
It's Moussa, Kyogo, French Eddie for me in that order. But a class act. I mean, it's not many players have shut Ibrox, you know, so it's pretty decent accolade to have in your
The Shut Ibrox trophy. He's kicking his heels at Leicester just now. I think he came off the bench again at the weekend to get beat 3-0 by Man United there. Doesn't really play much football. Is he on loan there actually from
I think so.
Palace?
Is he another one we add to the list of regrets?
Oh,
Je ne regrette rien is the chap.
Or is he just loving that London lifestyle that would have been at Palace?
He likes a
but-
bit of bling, doesn't he? He's got all the trackies and all the wages to go with it, to be honest with you.
Kyogo's better though for me. If we're doing that list, it's
Aye.
Kyogo.
where's Moussa?
We didn't get enough time with him.
The miss is at the top for me as well.
Absolutely. Class.
Just one other guy, and you did mention him. KT opened the scoring that night. Are we bringing him home?
I think we need to move on. He's too.
I refuse to move on.
Is he back from injury yet? What's this?
I think he's on the cusp of a
Is he?
return.
And is he at Arsenal now?
Yeah.
I'd be. Sorry.
No, just because I've lost track of where he's been because
Yeah,
he's just
yeah.
not featured that much.
I was chatting to an Arsenal pal of mine this summer and he was like, who's Tierney playing me now? I was like, you? Come on, Jim.
Yeah, he's been in and out, hasn't he?
So I'm obviously would love to have Tierney back at the club, but he cannot be your first choice left back. Just he's not got the stats to show the consistency and the reliability.
What
So-
if he's able for the big games, the
What
big
age is he?
European games? I don't know.
I think it's the
27 or
problem.
something.
Mid to late
It's
20s.
legs and stuff, you know. If we hypothetically, obviously, if you sign Bain a permanent and it's him and Tierney
KT?
rotating that,
That's good.
that's
That's
outstanding.
good.
As we know in the modern game, there is scope for rotation and getting guys certain minutes. I'd love to see it. Obviously, it does depend on where he's at. There was pictures recently of him and Rodgers at the Celtic Foundation dinner in London, was it? And there's clearly a good relationship there. They had a lot of success together. I mean, around about that time when he was scoring that goal against Leipzig, he was at the peak of his powers, KT. I'd love to see him back. And I wonder if I'm just getting caught up in the romantic notion of a boyhood Celtic fan coming
The
back
rumours
home,
were
but-
that this summer that was the plan.
Yeah,
There's been a lot of strong
but for
rumours.
his injury.
But for the injury.
And you saw with that injury just before that, he was he was playing outstanding for Scotland. So there's no doubt in his talent, his ability. It's just can the body handle it, you know?
Yeah.
But can it handle 20 games a season? Maybe.
Maybe so. Let's see what happens there. But yeah, the goal in question, Odsonne Edouard, Celtic v Leipzig, way back in November 2018. Okay, let's take a listen to this week's mystery goal scorer.
Against Radetzky. Oh, how is your nerve? Nonchalant from the and Celtic are level in Germany to not only go for the Panenka but to kiss it off the underside of the bar, John Hartson.
Got it.
Yeah.
Some no and nods. I'll give you the opportunity to ask him. I'll beep it out, but who do you think it was?
We were talking about him earlier.
The very
Absolutely. So we'll cover that in a bit more detail next week. And as always, we'll play the clip on socials for anyone who wants to have a go there. To close out the show, again, revisiting some Champions League stuff. So Celtic have now completed 50% of their 8 Champions League fixtures. As we all know, we're sitting 7 points from a possible 12. Pretty impressive considering who we've played. That is, a reminder, Slovan Bratislava, Borussia Dortmund, Atalanta, and recently RB Leipzig. The next 4 fixtures see us face Bruges at home, Dynamo Zagreb away, Young Boys at home, and Aston Villa away. A question for you in just a moment, but some further stats following the win against Leipzig. It's the first time we've won 3 consecutive home Champions League games since Gordon Strachan's time, 2007-2008. Nicolas Kuhn is the first Celtic player to score a Champions League double since who? We
Moussa
mentioned him.
Dembele.
Moussa
Man
Dembele
City.
v Man City in 2016. This one I really like. Nicolas Kuhn's first half double meant he was the first Celtic player to score 2 first half goals in a European Cup / Champions League game since who? You'll never get it. I'll give you a motor if you get it.
Alec McNeil.
Jimmy McGrory. Roy Aitken scored two goals in a 4-1 win over Partizan Tirana in October 1979.
I've got a question. How come the BBC never have those stats and they have an absolute almanac of negative stats for Celtic?
Yeah.
Kilmarnock have had the most shots since 2000.
Aye. It's ridiculous, man.
The stats here come from I think it's Celtic Stats and Trivia on Twitter. Check that out. Always some interesting ones. But 1979, so that's a record that stood for well over 40 years, and Nicolas Kuhn has that accolade. And the last stat, which is interesting, is it's the first time against Leipzig, was the first time we've won a Champions League game after conceding the first goal since we beat Shakhtar Donetsk 2-1 in November 2007. That must have been the Modernati goal. So yeah, some interesting stats there.
Who scored the other goal in that game?
McGeady? No.
Samaras?
Yuri Jarosik?
Jarosik?
Is it? I think so.
I thought we let him go too soon. That's another topic for another day.
A full show.
Thought he was a good player. Asim, we had a chat, myself, James and Paddy at the time. We recorded a show just after the draw had been made. You and I actually sat and talked. We were at the draw together at Celtic Park and then recorded a show. And I think we were pretty pleased. We'd done what I thought was an overwhelmingly optimistic episode on it.
Got caned for it, didn't we?
We get slammed. Used to numpties and back in your box and don't get above yourselves. What you blah blah blah. Anyway, we got above ourselves then. We're probably getting above ourselves now, but I'm all good with that. But we made some predictions at the time. James, me, you, and Paddy. After some revision, I think you settled on Celtic getting 10 points. So what's 24 points up for grabs? 8 games. So you said 10 at the time. Paddy said 12, and I said 11. And obviously we've now fared probably better than we thought. You know, if you take a line through it, you've got 7 from your first 4. Do you get 7 from your next 4 and end up on 14? Who knows? But if you can think back, Asim, do you remember generally what you thought at the time, how we would fare, and how do you feel now that we're 4 games in?
Yeah, we were really excited. I remember being at the draw and you're watching it unfold and you're like, in terms of what we could have got, it seemed like a good draw, and then we came back and can analyse where we may see ourselves getting the points, but I didn't foresee us picking up 7 in this first 4 games because I
Champions
think
League finalists, Europa League holders, second in the Bundesliga.
Yeah. So I think we all hoped we'd beat Bratislava, but then thereafter you're looking like maybe another point from those other 3 games, and you'd be fairly satisfied with that and try and pick up the rest of the necessary points in the last 4 games. So way ahead of schedule, and now we've got look, again, people say you're getting ahead of yourselves 1 game at a time, of course, but as fans we're allowed to look ahead a wee bit. If we win the next 3 games, win the bowl games, right, because 2 of them are at home against lesser sides in Leipzig, and then I know the away one's going to be tough, but again, if you said someone said to you win that and you're through to the top 8, which is essentially what's on the line here, 3 wins and you've got 15.
We're on 7.
7, so 9 plus 16 points, which should be enough for top 8 apparently.
Yeah,
that's the target now.
So you think the last one is the hardest one, right? Can you imagine how psychotically prepared Brendan Rodgers will be for that playing an EPL team?
Oh, 100%.
He'll have started as soon as the draw came out.
Yeah. I wouldn't put it past us to get something there as well.
I think we definitely could.
I think the graphic doing the rounds, I think it's an Opta graphic, is that 10 points gives you a 99% chance of going through to the top 24 to the knockout stages, but 16 points, as you say, gives a 98% chance of being in the top 8, which would be quite incredible. But given what we've done so far, and I await the accusations of getting ahead of myself, why can't Celtic beat Bruges, Zagreb and Young Boys?
I think that's the way they'll go about, getting the 3 points as the games come along. But you've come up against sterner tests and come through them, In fact, I was going through to find our early predictions, previous shows, and I caught you saying the RB Leipzig draw at home.
Do you want to edit that? Or just roll
with it. I can take it. It's the hardest of the home games, and that's taken care of.
Yeah. So
you've got Bruges and Young Boys there.
Yep.
Bruges extremely experienced in the Champions League, but it took them a lot to beat. Was it Villa last week? Aye. The penalty, the kind of Danny Mings penalty, madness. But it was Danny Ings. It was just Danny Mings.
Tyrone Mings.
Do you want to do that bit?
Maybe.
Got there in the end.
It was going to be it was looking like a scrappy draw, but for that, nobody was really on top of the game, I would say. Young Boys coming into a bit of form, but were very, very poor early in the campaign. Zagreb away is probably the hardest of those three. But I watched them against Bratislava and it was workmanlike stuff, you know. I think they won 4-1 or 4-0 in the end. And it kind of flattered them a wee bit, you know. Bratislava just kind of collapsed a wee bit. So I think you've got to be looking at 3 points for all those games. But there's no way Brendan will let us leave Villa Park without at least a point. No chance.
Do you know, it's funny. You could, in theory, be going to Villa Park already
Undusted.
home and hosed.
Yeah.
You
Well,
could just go
depends
there
what
for a
your target
party,
is.
take the
What-
beach balls.
Initially, all of us would have just accepted top 24.
Mm-hmm.
Now that
24th.
right,
Yeah.
and now
Scrape it in.
now we just need a victory essentially at home to Young Boys.
Yeah,
To
got that.
right, so you
Yeah.
feel like we're almost there. Again, not getting ahead of ourselves, but you feel like the target now will be within that dressing room. One game at a time, of course, the usual cliches. But why can't we try and aim for this top 8 with 9 more points?
They've shown they belong there.
And if we put in a performance like we did against Leipzig, I know it's hard to replicate different opposition who'll play differently, but Bruges and Young Boys won't be able to live with that kind of performance if we put that in again in terms of the energy, the quality, the output. And then Zagreb away is a test because, again, it's away from home. We're still not mastered getting 3 points
3
away
points,
from home,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And maybe that's the next progression for this side. I like the fact that the noise is internally, or when the players and manager are on media duties, they're very much playing it down. We'll not get ahead of ourselves. We're allowed to get ahead of ourselves, and that's always my defence for absolutely losing the plot. But I think the manager's very balanced. He was asked in the immediate aftermath, I caught it on the radio on the way home on Tuesday night, about can you now dream big, even beyond the 24? And he's like, absolutely not. It's been a great one tonight. We'll come back in tomorrow, we'll regroup, and we'll see what's next. You know, Kilmarnock's the next big challenge for us. And I think as boring and as cliche as that has become, it's the right message.
Yeah.
You know, that they'll be excited internally. And I think that this is why players come to Celtic. I think they'll be buzzed about the potential of doing this, but it'll be a clear focus. The next game is always the most important, and at this moment in time, that's Hearts, and that'll be the focus.
Absolutely is, you know, and that's, you know, Rodgers and his backroom staff obviously be doing preparation and resource management as bigger games come on the horizon, but the message to the players is your only focus is, you know, if we're doing all the great work, Atlanta, Aberdeen, Leipzig, and then you go and drop points against Kelly, you know, I think the fans would tolerate it, but it definitely dents you, that kind of thing. So you can't be looking too far down the horizon. Just look after your business.
The challenge is to prove that Leipzig wasn't a fluke or a one-off. Great performance as it was, you do need to follow up. If Celtic end up with this brilliant Leipzig performance and result and don't qualify, it's a disaster, it's a failure. I don't anticipate that. I think we'll go on and kick on in the section, but that is the challenge now, and I think the players will know that. Just to kind of wrap up on things, so as I said, my prediction was 11 points. James, you were 10. Paddy's not here to speak for himself, but he had 12. Do you want to revise it based on what we know? Do you think are you going to sit on 10, stick or twist? I feel like Bruce Forsyth higher.
16.
What?
Automatic qualification.
16.
Aye. They laughed at me when I said 9 for the first section, so
Right.
might as
So
well.
I'm just deleting your previous. So 16. I've went for 11. We're on 7 just now. Let me see. Have we beaten Bruges? Yes. I think that's us in 10. We might get a point at Zagreb. 11. I'm going to go 14. I don't know if we'll beat Villa. I'm going to go 14.
I think we beat Villa.
We'll see where we land. What are you going for, Asim?
I think I initially said 10, but I think winning the 2 home games takes us to 13, point in Zagreb. And I think by the time the last game comes, I think we might nick a point at Villa Road.
15 is it?
Villa Park.
15.
Yeah.
So just maybe
yeah,
missing out, but
I
maybe sneaking in as
It
well.
depends.
You were in Dortmund, Asim. Great trip apart from the football.
Paddy was there as well, wasn't
He
he?
was, aye. He said everything was magic and then we kicked off. Are you going to make it? You're not going to Zagreb, are you?
No, not going to Zagreb. Hopefully get down for Villa Park.
Yeah,
Not
see
got a
what's doing for
everything,
tickets
but,
there.
I was going to say just the Rodgers kind of response and attitude. I like that. He's not got too excited about it because it's almost part of the mentality is you want to make this seem normal.
Yes.
You want to make this seem like
That's the way he took it, yeah.
this is the level that I'm expecting. This is what we've been working towards. This isn't just one-off big fluke and then we go. And I think that's what he's probably drumming into players. I remember I bumped into him at one of the kind of local gyms a few weeks back. It was after the Slovan Bratislava game, and I managed to catch him. I went up to him.
Were you spotting him when he was bench pressing? How did this all play out?
I won't go
I
into
need
too much
detail.
details.
I saw him because I followed him in there.
So I seen him outside and I was just chatting to him and he was really open, really wanting, and it was the night after the Bratislava game and you could feel a sense of he's like, this is no surprise, and at that point it was just a Bratislava win, but he just said this is the most prepared he's ever felt going into a Champions League European campaign.
He'd been backed.
Yeah.
You know, that's always been the wrestling match. And Ange had it as well. Initially he didn't, but it started to creep in before he left. This is the first time, he had it last season, Rodgers. This season, he's been backed. And what a difference in mindset that must make. Because you can prepare all you want, but if you ask for 2 or 3 players that you haven't got, you're probably going to come unstuck. He's asked for players, he's got those players, and it's happening. Who would have thought at Celtic going and spending the money on the players we need, and we're going to qualify potentially at the Champions League?
Lo and behold. Did Brendan say, yeah, no, are you the guy for all the podcasts? Celtic State of Mind, Celtic Way, Celtic Exchange.
Do you think he watches them?
Aye, I think he does for all the mentions that he gets.
I bet he does.
Speaking of Champions League, best wishes to Celtic women who take on Chelsea at Celtic Park in their latest Champions League fixture on Wednesday. I'm heading along to that one. I'm going with Brido, and hopefully Elena Sidiku's side can get a big result on the night. They have lost their opening 2 games. They lost to FC Twente and Real Madrid, so they'll be hopeful of getting a big result against Chelsea. Tickets are still available. You can get them at the Celtic website. They're £16 for adults and £6 for under 16s. Busy old show, lots going on, lots of positive stuff. Asim, great to have you back here. What's your final comments for the week?
No, great to be back on in such positive times as well. Like I said at the start of the show, I'll end on the same kind of sentiments. It's such an exciting time to be a Celtic fan. So many big games coming up to look forward to, and with a genuine belief that not only are we going to continue to dominate domestically, we can make progress, and that's all we've been asking for as fans, is to see a bit of progress in Europe. And as James said, you spend a bit of money, you back the manager, and look at the results that we're getting.
Yeah, do you know, I seen a comment from somebody after Tuesday night saying this is what we've been waiting for, Celtic doing something in Europe after all this time. So great to see. James, final word goes to you.
Yeah, I suppose it just is that. It's what I feel is going on at Celtic just now is they're building something, and your point earlier on about results. We've had great results over the years from great managers, Lennon and the rest, Ange and co. But this is performance and result, and you just get that feeling that they're building something. And I suppose that the message to Celtic themselves is, don't take your eye off the ball on that, because that's a constant evolving process. It can't be like build that, spend nothing for 3 years, and constantly cycle it. Just keep quarter turning it season by season, or half season by half season as it goes. So I'm sure that we'll get more in depth on transfer window stuff in January as we get closer to that. But for now, just for once, I'm actually going to enjoy the international break.
I was going to say, exciting times all round, and then we can crash right into the latest international stuff. Do you know what? Do you know who Scotland are playing? Are they playing?
Poland, I think, because I've seen Lewandowski's out of it, so I think that's one of the games anyway. I don't know who the other one is. Croatia, maybe? Just
not on my radar at this moment in time. Let's hopefully get back to all things Celtic pretty soon. So that wraps things up on this latest Celtic Exchange Weekly. Thanks to James and Asim, and thanks to you for tuning in. We've got a couple of specials planned for during the international break, so keep an eye on our socials for news on them. And don't forget to visit the CelticExchange.supercast.com to give your support to the Celtic Exchange this season. But in the meantime, as always, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you again soon.